A sister's life on the line, when past grudges collide with a desperate plea. I, a 32-year-old woman, am standing on the edge of a precipice, staring down into the abyss of a shattered family. I just had the most devastating fight of my life with my sister, and I'm consumed by a mix of fury, heartbreak, and a terrifying question: am I the monster in this story? My older sister, Amelia, 35, and I grew up in a comfortable suburban home, the daughters of loving, albeit somewhat naive, parents. From the outside, we presented a facade of sisterly camaraderie, shared secrets, whispered dreams, and an unbreakable bond forged in childhood. But beneath that polished surface, there was always an unspoken, yet omnipresent, dynamic. Amelia was the golden child. She was the firstborn, dazzlingly intelligent, effortlessly charming, and seemingly destined for greatness. Every achievement of hers, from academic accolades to cheerleading triumphs, was met with effusive praise, elaborate family celebrations, and often, significant financial backing. When Amelia wanted to pursue a prestigious, but incredibly expensive, medical degree, my parents readily took out a second mortgage on our family home without a moment's hesitation, believing it was an investment in their brilliant daughter's future. When she later launched her own successful dermatology practice, they contributed a substantial sum for her initial overhead, seeing it as seed money for her burgeoning empire. Their pride in her was boundless, almost a tangible force in our home. I, on the other hand, was always viewed as more grounded, more sensible, perhaps even a little less ambitious. My passion for art and my choice to pursue a more modest career as a freelance graphic designer were met with polite nods and quiet suggestions about practicality and financial stability. My state university tuition was paid for, but every extra expense, every art supply purchase, every business development course, was entirely my responsibility. There was no discussion of second mortgages or seed money for my dreams. Those resources seemed exclusively reserved for Amelia's grander ventures. This subtle, yet persistent, favoritism permeated every aspect of our lives, creating an invisible but palpable divide. Amelia, bless her heart, never seemed to notice, taking their boundless generosity as her birthright, a natural consequence of her inherent brilliance. I, meanwhile, developed a gnawing sense of having to prove my worth, to fight for every scrap of recognition, to build my success from the ground up, entirely on my own merits. Our parents, I truly believe, thought they were being fair. They saw Amelia as needing investment, because her path was more ambitious and impactful, while my independence, to them, was a sign of my inherent strength and self-reliance, not a consequence of their differential treatment. There was a deep-seated tension in our relationship, a silent rivalry that I always tried to suppress. I loved Amelia, of course, but her effortless success, her unquestioning acceptance of parental handouts, often felt like a painful, constant reminder of my own perceived lesser status. The emotional tone was one of superficial harmony, masking my deep-seated resentment and Amelia's unacknowledged privilege. This core imbalance, buried beneath years of forced smiles and unspoken pain, was about to erupt with devastating consequences for all of us. The slow, insidious build-up to this family implosion has been a relentless, grinding pressure beneath the surface of my life for years, escalating dramatically over the past 2 years. Amelia's outwardly perfect life began to show cracks. First, a chronic fatigue diagnosis, then increasingly severe symptoms that baffled specialists. Her thriving dermatology practice started to falter, her perfectly curated social life became almost non-existent, and her vibrant energy waned. She was eventually diagnosed with a rare, aggressive form of kidney disease. It was devastating news for our entire family. During this period, I stepped up. While our parents navigated the emotional turmoil, I took on the practical burden, researching specialists, sitting through agonizing appointments, coordinating experimental treatments, and offering unwavering emotional support, always hoping for a miracle. Amelia, stripped of her usual confidence, became vulnerable, leaning on me in a way she never had before. For a brief, hopeful period, it felt like the old sisterly bond, untainted by resentment, was rekindling. However, as her condition worsened, the cracks in our rekindled bond began to show. As the only biological sibling, the doctors quickly identified me as a potential living donor. The first round of tests revealed a devastating truth: I was a perfect match. Not just a match, but an almost ideal one, genetically. The news sent a ripple of complicated emotions through me. Relief that Amelia had a chance, but also a paralyzing fear of the surgery, the recovery, and the long-term implications for my own health and my modest, self-made life. My partner, David, a steady and supportive presence, shared my concerns. He knew the years of subtle favoritism, the quiet resentment I carried, but he also recognized the immense gravity of the situation. He gently reminded me that this was my choice, and mine alone. My parents, however, didn't see it as a choice. From the moment the doctor confirmed I was a perfect match, their focus shifted entirely to the transplant. My mother began referring to it as our miracle, God's plan, and Sarah's gift to her sister. There was immense pressure, thinly veiled as loving expectation. Amelia, fragile and overwhelmed by her illness, started to echo their sentiments, perhaps unknowingly. "You're my only hope, Sarah," she'd whisper, her eyes wide with desperation. The subtle betrayals began to resurface. Whenever I expressed concerns about the risks, or asked for time to think, my mother would sigh dramatically. "Amelia is dying, Sarah. How can you hesitate?" Mark, my older brother, and a more distant figure, even called once, saying, "You owe this to her, Sarah. She's family. What's wrong with you?" These were early warning signs, chilling reminders of the past, now amplified by the immense stakes. The emotional distance between me and my family, which had briefly lessened, now returned with a vengeance, fueled by their relentless pressure and my spiraling anxiety. This escalating tension, fueled by my fear, their expectations, and the weight of a life hanging in the balance, built to an unbearable pressure, pushing us closer and closer to an inevitable, devastating collision. The powder keg finally detonated last Tuesday, during a tense family meeting at my parents' house, explicitly called to discuss the transplant date. My parents, looking strained but determined, sat opposite me, with Amelia, pale and frail, beside them. The air was thick with unspoken expectations, the weight of Amelia's illness hanging heavy over us all. My mother, taking the lead, cleared her throat. "Sarah, the transplant coordinator called. They have a slot open next month. We just need your final confirmation." She spoke with a tone of finality, as if my consent was a mere formality. I looked at them, my heart pounding against my ribs, but a fierce, protective defiance surged through me. "I need more time," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, despite the tremor in my hands. "I have concerns about the long-term impact on my health, on my career, and the financial implications of the recovery period. I need to fully understand everything before I commit." My father's jaw tightened. My mother's face, however, slowly contorted into a mask of disbelief and then, pure, incandescent rage. "More time, Sarah?" she spat, her voice low and dangerous, each word a venomous dart. "Amelia is dying. Every day counts. What could possibly be more important than saving your sister's life? After all we've done for you, after all she's been through?" My heart hammered. This was it. The culmination of years of being second best, of unacknowledged sacrifices, of being overlooked. "What you've done for me, Mother!" I shrieked, my voice escalating, betraying all the control I had tried to maintain. "What about the second mortgage you took out for Amelia's elite law school, while I scraped by on student loans? What about the seed money for her practice, while I started mine with nothing but my savings? What about the countless times you've praised her genius and dismissed my career as a mere hobby? Did you ever once ask me what I needed?" Amelia, her face paling, tried to interject, her voice weak. "Sarah, please, now is not the time for this. I'm sick." "Oh, now is not the time for my feelings, Amelia?" I roared, turning my furious gaze to her. "It's never been the time for my feelings, has it? It's always been about your achievements, your needs, your dreams. I've been your silent cheerleader, your dependable backup, your emergency contact, and now your potential organ donor, with no thought for what I want, what I feel, or what this will do to my life. You expect me to just give you a piece of myself, after a lifetime of you taking everything else for granted? My father finally intervened, his voice strained. Sarah, that's enough. This is about Amelia's life. How can you be so selfish? She's your sister. Selfish? I scoffed, the words laced with bitter irony. I'm selfish for wanting my own autonomy? For not wanting to be a convenient spare part? What about her selfishness? What about your favoritism that created this monster of expectation? My mother stood up, her face flushed with fury. You are an ungrateful, cruel child, Sarah. You are killing your sister with your bitterness. You are no daughter of ours if you let your sister die because of petty jealousy. Her words, raw and cruel, cut deeper than any blade. Then maybe I never was your daughter, if your love is conditional on me being your convenient organ bank. I retorted, tears of pain and anger streaming down my face. I grabbed my purse, my heart pounding, and stormed out of their house, leaving them stunned and silent, Amelia sobbing softly. The confrontation was brutal, raw, and utterly devastating. My parents, genuinely believing they were acting out of love and necessity for their dying daughter, felt personally betrayed by my hesitation. Amelia, frail and desperate, was likely blindsided by the depth of my resentment. I, consumed by years of unacknowledged pain and the immense pressure of a life-or-death decision, finally erupted. Both parties had understandable, though deeply flawed, motivations, creating a profound, painful moral ambiguity. The immediate aftermath of that explosive confrontation was a desolate, echoing void. I drove away from my parents' house in a daze, the scent of fear and the acrid tang of shattered dreams clinging to me. My body shook uncontrollably, and the white-hot rage that had fueled my outbursts slowly drained away, replaced by a chilling numbness, then a crushing wave of grief. It felt like I hadn't just ended a fight, I had detonated my entire family structure, the one I had so painstakingly navigated for decades, only to discover it was built on a foundation of conditional love and deeply ingrained favoritism. The betrayal, the explicit confirmation that their love was tied to my conformity and utility, was a physical ache in my chest, a constant, gnawing pain that made it hard to breathe. For the first few days, I was a ghost in my own life. I barely ate, and sleep was an elusive torment, plagued by nightmares of Amelia's tear-streaked face, my mother's furious expression, and my father's stunned disappointment. My mind raced, constantly replaying every word of the argument, every subtle slight from the past, every instance of their unwavering control and preference for Amelia. I felt foolish, utterly naive, for holding on to the hope that they would ever truly see or accept me for who I was, or acknowledge the deep wounds their favoritism had inflicted. The guilt also started to creep in, an insidious whisper suggesting I was too harsh, too selfish, too quick to air decades of grievances when my sister's life hung in the balance. Had I been too extreme? Did I destroy any chance of reconciliation and perhaps even jeopardize Amelia's life by exposing my resentment so brutally? My daily life became an almost unbearable burden. My freelance graphic design work, which usually brought me joy, now felt bland and uninspiring. My focus was shattered. I'd stare blankly at my computer screen for hours, unable to concentrate, my mind trapped in a relentless loop of anger, sadness, and frantic questioning. My appetite vanished, and a constant, dull headache throbbed behind my eyes, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil. The moral dilemma of the transplant, once a weighty decision, now felt almost unbearable, compounded by the emotional wreckage. The conflict also profoundly affected my other relationships. Leo, bless his kind heart, was my unwavering anchor. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart, offered constant validation, and simply held me as I cried for hours. "You were brave, Clara," he'd whisper. "You did what you had to do." His validation was a balm, but it couldn't fully heal the gaping wound. My closest friends, whom I finally confided in, were shocked but supportive, sharing stories of their own struggles with complex family dynamics. But even their support couldn't fill the void left by the potential loss of my family. My parents were distraught. My mother called a few times, her voice strained, pleading with me to come to my senses and not ruin Amelia's chance. She seemed completely unable to grasp the severity of her favoritism or the fundamental emotional damage she had inflicted. This inability to see my perspective, to acknowledge their role, felt like a final, crushing betrayal. The silence from Amelia was deafening. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. It was as if I had become a ghost in her life, and the thought was excruciating. The grief for the family I thought I had, for the love I always craved, was profound and almost unbearable. I missed the ease of superficial interactions, even as I recognized that living a lie was far more damaging. The weight of it all, the loneliness, the confusion, and the terrifying uncertainty of what comes next, felt utterly crushing. It's been almost 3 weeks since the explosion at my parents' house, and the silence is absolute. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation from their end, or from Amelia. My brother, Mark, has sent a few terse texts hinting at his disappointment in my selfishness. Leo has been my unwavering support, my steadfast presence through this storm, but I feel the strain on him. I've spent countless sleepless nights replaying every moment of that confrontation, every subtle slight from childhood, every unacknowledged dream. My mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and doubts, and I desperately need an outside perspective to make sense of this wreckage. Was I too harsh? Did I go too far by calling my parents out so brutally, by telling them their love was conditional and that I felt like a convenient organ bank? I understand that from their perspective, and likely Amelia's, they genuinely believed they were acting out of love and a desperate need to save a life. They might see my hesitation, and my outburst, as unforgivable selfishness, especially given Amelia's critical condition. They likely feel attacked, unappreciated for all they did provide, despite the control and favoritism. Is my years of pent-up resentment and exhaustion coloring my judgment, making me an unfair accuser, an ungrateful daughter who prioritized past grievances over a life-saving act? On the other hand, the weight of being perpetually overlooked, of having my true self suppressed for decades, of my deepest passions being dismissed as mere hobbies, while I was pushed into a life I never truly desired, this feels like a profound, lifelong injustice. The feeling of being unloved for who I truly am, rather than for who they wanted me to be, is a pain that runs bone deep. My resentment had been simmering for so long. The pressure to donate an organ, especially after a lifetime of being treated as secondary, felt like the ultimate exploitation. Was it wrong of me to finally demand autonomy and recognition for my true worth, even if it meant a dramatic, public confrontation that shattered our family's fragile peace and put my sister's immediate future in question? I felt like I was fighting for my dignity, for my right to self-determination, for the very essence of my happiness, even as I recognized the immense, life-or-death implications for Amelia. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you because I'm lost and heartbroken. Was I wrong for finally exploding at my parents and dying sister over decades of favoritism and their expectation that I donate an organ, leading to a complete rupture in our family? Was my outburst justified, a necessary act to finally liberate myself from years of suppression and an inauthentic existence, or did I simply destroy any chance of reconciliation and cause irreversible pain, making myself the villain in this tragic story? I need honest, unbiased perspectives, because right now, I'm consumed by guilt, grief, and confusion, and I don't know how to navigate this fractured family dynamic or build a future free from their shadow, especially with my sister's life hanging in the balance.